I'd have to give that more thought. I don't think that turning away from the media will be the answer, and I don't even know to what extent that's possible. It happens that just recently I was reading about a contributor to a major news network in the United States who herself doesn't even own a television set, which is very interesting. Yet she works in the field, but she understands, it seems, that certainly you cannot just take at face value what's offered in today's society by mass media. And I think personally that the answer, rather than turning away, is in the area of formation. How do we teach people to become critical thinkers? How do we teach people to understand that not everything you hear or everything you read should be taken at face value? And how do we come to give people the formation that they need to read something or to hear something and to be able to discern, if you will, to understand that that underlying the message that's being communicated is a very different message or a very subtle message that has severe consequences for the future of society, let's say, that can or cannot be understood as a part of a much bigger picture, if you will. I began reflecting on this topic myself because of having lived outside the United States now for a number of years. And then when I would go back to the United States and perhaps just watch a TV show at random or visiting friends or relatives, seeing the change that has taken place in the kinds of content that are in sitcoms, that are spoken about on your regular TV programs, even on news shows, the kinds of messages that seem to be portrayed, and the slant that is taken at times in whichever direction, the kinds of even polemical argumentation that is presented on TV in the United States. Following through with that, I think it's not just the United States. We find that a lot in the Western world, and it changes from place to place depending where you are. After giving my intervention, an Italian came to speak to me about it and said, well, he didn't agree with what I said. For example, the mention of abortion. He said, we don't talk about that in Italy. And I said, well, maybe you don't in Italy, but we certainly do in other parts of the Western world. But then he came up himself with other examples of how the media has been used in Italy to present certain kinds of arguments, certain political questions, that in the same way, if you control the media, you can at least partially control the way people are thinking, because that's the message that people hear constantly. So again, I think our real challenge is in formation. Our challenge is in preparing people to become critical thinkers and to understand what's going on in the world around us today. I think that, again, looking at several things that were pointed out during the synod, the answer has to be multifaceted, of course. The question about rhetoric that I bring up, I think that today the formation that we give to future priests is extremely important. The preaching that is done has to be done well. This too was pointed out by some of the synod fathers. At times half in jest, but I'm sure very seriously, in every occasion where reference was made to the Sunday homily. And someone said maybe we should even examine ourselves. How are we preaching and what are we saying? And what's not so much the content in terms of the message, but the way that we do it. Are we able today to reach out to people and convince them of the message? So there's a very important question there. It's been acknowledged that most people today receive their so-called ongoing catechesis or ongoing education in the faith in those 8 to 10 minutes, 15 minutes of the Sunday homily. And that's it for the week. So that places a great challenge before those of us who are called to stand up in the pulpit and to announce the good news. Obviously, there's a challenge that has been spoken about of the need to organize programs of adult education, of ongoing catechesis, preparation for the sacraments, and follow-up after the sacraments at all stages of life. But there, again, I think the church in every country or within every culture has to seriously ask itself, how are we going to get people to come back and listen Or how are we going to go out to people with the message so that they hear what it is we're trying to communicate in terms of the teaching of the gospel, the teaching of Jesus Christ? And that is a big challenge, because those who are still coming to church, and there are many, of course, receive those 8 minutes of a homily, if you will, hopefully are also being introduced to that mystery that we spoke about earlier, and in some way are growing at least in the desire to know more about their faith. And so you have one area of work or activity there. But we also have to ask ourselves, what about all those people who are leaving actively or who have just fallen away in sort of a passive way? How do we get back to them? How do we reach out to them, invite them in? And there's a lot of discussion on that. I think there were some good exchanges during the synod on this topic, but I'm sure that there's a lot more work to do as each bishop's conference or as the Church Universal continues to reflect upon the challenges of the new evangelization. We need to reach out to those people as well. And so, again, formation is the answer, but how do you deliver the message? How do you deliver, if you will, the teaching of the gospel to people, so many people who will not be there on Sunday morning to hear the Sunday morning homily? As a matter of fact, many people within the church recognize the value of social media, if it's used properly, of course, and the need for the church to at least have a presence there. There are a number of bishops in the United States, for example, who have a page on Facebook or who are on Twitter. Those are the two areas that I'm a little bit familiar with. I personally put some things up once in a while on Facebook, and I'm amazed at the very quick response that I receive from around the world, in my case, because there are Augustinians and lay people connected with the Augustinian order who follow my Facebook page. So I'll put a little piece of news up there, an invitation, a little reflection at times, and that is a way of reaching people. So again, I think the church needs to be sophisticated, if you will, also in terms of the use of the social networks that are available to us. It's just one more way of reaching out to people. And maybe a little word, a little reflection, an invitation will be the trick will be the way that we can reach out to someone and make them, again, reflect about their faith and even encourage them to come back and find out more. Yes, it can be it is very powerful, wide-reaching, and can be very effective, just as it can be damaging in the sense that, again, if someone does not have a discerning or critical ability to see what's there, it can also mislead someone very easily.